Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my session. Let's see, where did I go here? All right. I swear that they keep hiding the buttons you need the most. There we are. Okay. What even is diversity, equity, inclusion? We hear it all the time. We hear it from our jobs. We hear it on the news. We hear me talking about it. And apparently Greg has heard about it now too, even got a book sent to him. What even is it? I think what happens is people hear this and go, ugh, there's that diversity talk again. Ugh. What does that mean? They're going to bring in someone who's underqualified, or they're going to do this, or they're going to it. And I always ask people, how does DEI affect you negatively? It actually doesn't. But I think we kind of become a little defensive of it because it honestly does sound very corporate or very buzzwordy, right? But there is good practice behind it. So I'm going to start with a little interaction. You can just throw out your answers to me. What does diversity mean to you?
Respecting and understanding cultures of everybody.
There we are. Would it help if I could spell? Anyone else? What does diversity, just the word diversity, mean to you?
Acknowledgement.
Go ahead, Jen.
What was that?
Janice and I both started speaking at the same time. I was telling Janice she could
So
go
sorry about that. My word would be acknowledgement.
And mine would be different viewpoints from different backgrounds.
So all really right in the ballpark. Diversity actually means who. Well, fine. Who is represented? Different genders, ages, race, ethnicities, nationalities, physical abilities, and neurodiversity. Who is represented? If I, as a woman, come to your club and it's very male heavy, I might feel a little awkward. What if I'm a person of color, but your club is very not colorful? It's all about representation. And obviously you have to get those first members in that don't look like everyone else in your club. But diversity really does go back to what you all said. It's respecting other cultures and identities, acknowledgement, and bringing in different viewpoints. And you do these things by representing. When we look out in the world, we have different genders. We have age ranges from infancy to bye grandma to we have people from different cultures, backgrounds, countries. In one of my clubs, we have one of our newest members is a transplant, an immigrant from India who actually lives in another state. But he found our club because he was looking for something that met virtually during a time that he was available. So it is a lot of fun to have someone who not only has the different perspective of being someone from another country, but also someone who's not even in our state who can interact and give us information and feedback about what's going on even in another part of our country. What does equity mean to you? That's the first thing that pops in your head about equity.
Making sure that everybody has the same opportunity.
Anyone else? I can
Equal
see every-
voice.
Equal
Under-
voice.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Greg.
Understanding everyone's needs proportionately.
And that is perfect. And actually, I think that Greg's answer is probably the closest. What equity is, it's fairness and justice. We think about equality. You could see in this image on my slide on the left-hand panel, it says equality. There's a sports ball game happening in the background. There's a fence and there's 3 people trying to watch the game. One's a very tall person, one's a short person, and one is a person in a wheelchair. So equality is everyone gets the same box to stand on to watch the game. But that's not equity. Equity is understanding that everyone has different needs. It's not just providing everyone with the same, it is providing them with something that can give them the same experience. It's making adjustments to imbalances. If you have a member in your club, for example, who might be a little hearing impaired or who are deaf, especially in a virtual world, you want to make sure that you provide captioning, which I just realized my captioning is not on, and it usually is. I have a brand new computer. I apparently forgot to turn that option on. Sorry about that, everyone. But captions are fantastic. Captions aren't just for people who are deaf. What if you're sitting there and you can't really turn your volume up too loud because someone's sleeping over here, or you have a child, or you might be somewhere where you're watching it in a public place, but you can't listen. Maybe you forgot your earbuds or headphones. So you could turn on captions. I love captions. They're fantastic. So equity all has to do with not just giving everyone the same, but being able to make adjustments for people who need something a little different in order to achieve the same. All right. What does inclusion mean to you? Sorry, I know I'm putting everyone on the spot today.
Giving everybody a seat at the table.
That might be making sure everybody is included, that everybody has the same chance to belong, that they're not separated or segregated.
I think meeting people where they're at, regardless of who you are, what group you are.
Excellent. These are all beautiful answers, and they will be saved in my slides for posterity. Inclusion is having members feel respected, having a sense of belonging, which you have all said in your answers. Connection and community, the being able to participate and achieve their goals, and to promote openness. I think everyone won at this slide by honestly saying everything that is on my slide. So I didn't even have to say anything different than what you said, but it is having a sense of belonging, not making that person who might be a little different, whether it's due to a disability or being someone from a different background from your group. You don't want to make them feel different or other. We should celebrate their differences and actually include those differences, because that's what life is all about, honestly. But I think I get to that in another slide. I'm jumping ahead. I do want to talk a moment before we go to the last little bit, and my session's actually a little short today. But implicit bias, if you have never heard this term, an implicit bias is a negative attitude that you have towards a certain group that you might not even really be aware of. There is Project Implicit. This was developed by a psychologist who, or actually a group of them, they created these online tests, and you can go through this list and go, oh, am I more biased for or against weapons? Am I more biased or for or against a certain group? They have a huge long list. It's actually kind of fun to do. You don't have to agree with it, but maybe just take a moment and think, do I really have these thoughts, or where do they come from? Because we don't always know. It's things we see on TV. It's things we hear from other people. And guess what? AI has bias. Artificial intelligence. Why do they have bias? Because we build AI. Human beings create artificial intelligence. We implant them. We teach them. We teach artificial intelligence, and then we say, hey, go out and learn more. But they go out learning more with a bias implanted. I'll be honest. I grew up with a family where we were not very fond of Armenians. Why, you ask? I asked my mom that question when I was a kid. Mommy, why do we not like Armenians? My family was Russian, by the way. And my mom really couldn't give me a good answer. It was, she learned it from her mom learned it. It was somewhere 150, 200 years ago. There was some conflict between our group and their group, and we just don't like them.
Beds.
I don't, but that was an implicit bias. So for example, for artificial intelligence, Amazon has a recruiting platform to find new people to join the Amazon team. Guess what Amazon's artificial intelligence learned? It learned that being male was important to being a successful programmer. It was skipping women's applications for programming jobs, because the people who initially built and programmed this were all male. So they used terms like he and him. The AI learned, got to be a man to be a programmer. Another fun one that they found while doing some research is that the object detection systems in self-driving cars were better at detecting light skin versus dark skin. Self-driving cars were stopping or swerving to avoid hitting someone who has light skin. But if you had dark skin, it might not see you at all. It might not recognize you as something it should avoid. This wasn't done with malice, but this was because the people who were building the tech, who were programming it, they were the ones saying, this is a person. Greg, you had a question or a comment?
I have a comment that affected me. When years back, when they introduced the affirmative action program to make sure everybody had equal opportunities in the workforce, one of the things is in the state of California, when they had a promotional test or a test, and went by the rank of 3 that allowed, if you're the first rank or you scored in the second rank or third rank, all 3 ranks came up for people to interview and select. But there was a mandate put on there that it has to be so many of a certain race has to be included. Consequently, in the interviewing, you'd find qualified candidates, but you'd have to pass the more qualified or the individual, looking at the individual, they are more qualified in your interviewing, but yet you still were directed to select somebody else that was not quite experienced or knowledgeable or qualified, and to do that to meet this. That built up some, I think, implicit bias among people.
Yeah, and that is true. That was, I think a lot of people saw that as, oh, well, now you're hiring based on a race or a color or a gender, and they're not as qualified. The problem is that these races and genders were being excluded for so long that they had no way to get that experience. So I think the early days of the affirmative action plan you mentioned in California was to try to get those people to get the experience so that they weren't left behind. Otherwise, they would never get the jobs. Nowadays, we see this a little bit less. In modern DEI programming at companies, it is generally looked at as more of, let us market our jobs that are available in a way that brings in the largest diverse group of pool of people that we can choose from. It's no longer a matter of trying to meet a quota, and I think that left a bad taste in people's mouth because they didn't understand the reason for it. And I think it was poorly executed and not marketed well back in the day.
No, I
Heather.
agree that it was poorly marketed to the understanding, just like pathways.
But I need that sound effect. Heather.
I was just going to add to that, as a woman in technology, it was always thought we weren't hiring women because they weren't good enough. They weren't equal to the men. And the problem was we weren't getting candidates because it wasn't being marketed to those candidates. So therefore we had a shortage of women, and it wasn't that they were any less quality, et cetera. And this was a back and forth battle for years of getting more women into technology. It was, you weren't marketing to those people. It wasn't that they were being hired because they were not as good as, and they were trying to be included for DEI efforts. It was just, they didn't exist. So just wanted to make that comment there.
Yeah, and it is one of those, being a woman in tech and having been a woman who was in the Marine Corps. It's a tough fight. It's constantly, yes, I am good enough. Yes, I can be here. Yes, I have a seat at the table. It wasn't, hi, Johnny, here's a seat at the table. I had to fight for that seat. And I think with incorporating DEI into our club meetings or in places of employment, or even just in our personal lives, we're no longer making people fight for that seat at the table. We're saying, hey, please come up and dine with me so I can learn more and you can learn more. So does DEI matter? And I think we covered a lot of this in our conversation already. But DEI can make your club more successful. And one thing I know Greg had mentioned in one of the earlier slides was having, unique and diverse voices, having different viewpoints. It enriches everyone because then you can see things from other people's viewpoints. How does that mesh with what I learned? How does that mesh with how I grew up? How does that mesh with my values? You may find something that someone else does and go, oh, that's a really great way of looking at this situation or this thing in life, or wow, you really can add beats to everything. Okay, sorry, that's my Russian showing. But it can be helpful in converting new members. When you take DEI seriously in your club by saying, here's a seat at the table, and you get more diverse viewpoints, then when that new person shows up, oh, I see different people. I see someone who looks like me. Or even if they might not look exactly like me, a lot of people appear to be different. It doesn't always have to be how people look, but it's how we think. It's how we speak. It increases innovation. How does it increase innovation? By having different viewpoints. Give me just a sec, Greg, and I'll have you add in. It increases innovation because when you have multiple perspectives, you might find an answer to a question that you didn't think about if you just have the same people thinking the same way. Greg.
Yes, I think this would be a checklist in a sense that you have here that could be provided to the club officers when they meet in their monthly officers meeting. And to use this checklist and call out each member's name and go through this checklist. Whether a new member or a mature member, do they feel like they belong? Are they been active? And are they satisfied? And from your experience of watching the members at different meetings, how they participate, how their body language is when they're listening, and how they speak, you can tell and receive a lot of these answers just by your observation as a group of leaders of a team. And I think this might be an excellent checklist that could be offered to clubs to look at.
Thank you so much. I know, and I do have Raven here from my Titan Toastmasters. We love our members that have been there for a long time, and we're actually working on leveraging those members as a way to say, hey, we can provide mentorship and a mature thought and someone who's been through a lot of different experiences that aren't going to exist anymore that you can learn from. And that's always a very valuable thing to a club. It also increases, again, it increases retention. It's not just converting new members, but it's keeping members because I feel included. I feel like I belong. I have that seat at the table. And finally, member satisfaction. We're not just talking about the same thing every week because we're hearing different voices. We're hearing speeches from people with different perspectives and from different backgrounds and learning new things.
And I think one thing that you can add to that is, do the members get excited about the next meeting coming up? Do they want to be there? Are they excited about being there? Does your club challenge them and display a meeting that wants them to, hey, I can't wait till the next one. I had so much fun.
Exactly. And I think that's always good. But as you can see, I have some of my credentials on this page at my place of employment. That Accessibility Champion program is mine. I'm launching it this spring. I'm also an LGBTQ ally on my campus, meaning that any staff or faculty member or student who needs a safe place to be or someone to talk to or someone who understands can come to me. I'm also a VetNet ally, which means that any veteran on campus, I am someone who's been trained who they can come to have someone to safely speak with or even just hide an office to hide out in. So that's at this point, that is my contact info. So feel free to contact me. I can give this in the chat as well if anyone is interested, and I will stop sharing at this point. And did anyone have any questions?
Yes, I don't know if this scenario that happened at another club fits into this DEI scenario, and so correct me if I'm wrong. We had a table topic asked, and I forget, one of the male members responded about a female and a male pilot, co-pilot, and referring back and forth. And at the end of the meeting, one of the young ladies felt that she said she felt unsafe between this. Well, I sat there and I'm watching this. I'm going, okay, wow, that's I'm not identifying. Why does she feel unsafe? So after the meeting, I called another lady who I respect and probably understood those feelings better. And it says, what happened here? It was a joke about a male and a female pilot, and this happened. And so what was unsafe about that? And of course, this gal, I respect her and she's younger than I am. She's about 40, and she's saying, the reference between the two different genders and the way it was caused that. I says, so did you feel that too? And I said, yes. I said, what did you feel? And she says, well, I felt upset. I felt worried and so forth. And I says, is that what a lot of, and the other ladies that chimed in with this gal said that. And I said to myself, okay, I need to understand this more. So in your view of this scenario, I was asked by the club officers to talk to this individual about it. And here's my problem in dealing with the individual who's probably in his late 60s. I'm in my 70s. I'm going, okay, I'm not really sure about what they're talking about because when I was growing up, this was non-existent, this feeling of this DEI stuff. But yet I still need to talk to him to understand that, make him aware that in today's world, we can offend people, so we have to learn and to adjust. And so after a long discussion, after I broke down his barriers of refusal to accept, to understanding, he said, okay, I agree. So when we talk about genders, jokes, or gender differences in our club meetings, for example, if we're doing it in a speech, whatever, are there areas from this scenario that you could tell me how to better avoid or understand so I know my audience better?
Oh, absolutely. This is 1000% under DEI. And you say it didn't exist when you were younger. It did. Women
But I
didn't
didn't know it.
speak
I
up.
didn't know it.
Exactly. I think women feel more, and I am a woman in my 50s. So I remember my mother getting her first credit card, right? When she was able to get one under her own name and not just use her husband's credit card. So it is absolutely under there. I think when it comes to gender jokes, there can be ones that are funny and play on the generalization of male versus female.
Like the
We
dumb
may
blonde.
all, yeah, we may all
The dumb
giggle,
blonde.
but sometimes when the joke makes either gender or there's multiple genders feel less than. And
Inferior.
that's probably where this person, if that joke was told as there were two pilots and pilot one did this and pilot two did this, and then pilot two caused the plane to crash, if the joke's set up properly, the gender shouldn't matter. But if the joke is reliant on the gender, that's, I think, where you get into trouble. So when you're going to do any either joke or speech or anything where you might refer to different genders, take the genders out and say it again. Does it still make sense? Is it still funny?
So that could be.
If you're like, that joke is heavily reliant on playing on people's bias on, women drivers or, something like that, then
And I
because
could replace.
statistically, women get lower rates on car insurance because we are statistically better drivers, but there's this persistent women aren't as good a driver. Oh, it's a woman driver.
Yeah, and so that I could change the word gender to race in there in the same idea.
Absolutely.
And
If the race or gender is not relevant,
right.
leave it out.
Okay.
If you can say it without the race or gender and it still makes sense. Now, sometimes your speech might be relevant to race or gender, in which case run it by someone and either who's, maybe outside the club or someone of that race or gender, hopefully say, look, I'm going to preface this with, I'm running this by you and I'm hoping to use some of your emotional to give me some of your emotional time, because it is exhausting to have to, always
So
be the teaching moment. But find someone, even if they're the same race or gender, just run it by someone else and go, does that?
So let
No.
me ask you this table topic. In today's world, we have male and females that are into sports, but now we have how do I tag this person? The person who has changed sex,
Transgender.
transgender, who has now into female sports, even though with the male's physical body, how would you solve that problem if that was a table topic? Right there, I'm going, whoa, wait a second here. I don't know the history. I hear a lot of women speaking up against this, and so whatever I hear in the news, but to be fairly responsive to that table topic would be a very difficult one for me to address, because there's a prejudice from the women that are really standing up against this because of the competing things. There's the transgender movement, which is becoming more recognized, even making toys that appeal to the whatever. It's a very confusing time. So
Right.
if I was a table topics master, I would avoid asking a question like that. But some people do ask us, and I'm going, boy, I'm glad I didn't get asked that.
When a question like that comes up, you could always answer it with, that plays on a life experience that I don't have. I don't have enough friends or people I know who are transgendered, and I don't know enough about the biology or science behind it. However, I think sports are great. Soccer is my favorite.
Okay.
You flip that script. Maybe that is
Yeah.
something, honestly, I would hope a table topics master would never ask that question. I do understand a lot of the science behind it. I hear a lot of the people that complain about it, or I think the loud voices that are getting heard are not the majority.
Mhm.
Or there are people who don't understand. And I am happy to talk about this off line if you ever want to know more. I wish you were there for I did talk a little bit about it when it came to like pronoun usage, because we have people who have gender identities who, because there's a huge umbrella of different types of people. And I know it's rough. It took me, like I mentioned, I'm a woman in my 50s. I had a learning curve too. This wasn't something that was active with me. If you look at someone who's in their teens and 20s, they have been exposed to this most of their life. For a lot of us in our 40s, 50s, 60s upwards, it's like, this is all still new. And I even mentioned, I said, you don't have to understand it. You just have to respect it. That's what all it comes down to. You can just go say, I don't get it at all, but I still like you as a person. And that's at the end of the day, that's the best you can do. But when someone's asking questions like that, if you ever do get a question like that, just flip the script.
Sure. Well, that's a good thought. It's just that it's becoming more and more apparent, and in 1993, I taught the first female firefighting academy in this country. And I received a lot of feedback during that period from my peers saying, "Oh, they can't. A girl can't carry me out of a fire if to rescue me." And I says, "Well, you should know enough not to be falling down and being rescued in there to have to do that. She'd be able to. That's why you have a buddy system." The second thing, the wives would call me, "Those girls are sleeping in the same barracks as my husband." And I'd say, "Well, we have partitions, we have separate restrooms are being built. We're trying to accommodate all this." I went through a lot of I don't know, scrutiny and so to be sane, had to keep telling myself, I have to believe in what I'm doing. And that was a learning curve for me. I had to
Yeah.
believe these women, these ladies that I was training, that would, when they came out, could show that they were competent and knew their job. And that's what I worked, and that's what I explained to them every day. That was my goal. And out of the 31, we graduated to 28. I think there's about five.
Nice.
This is just not the job for me. And they were honest with me, and I says, and I accept that. But that was a big, and that was before affirmative action. That was just something I was given a job to do, and I did it, and I tried to put my belief in. If I'm looking back in today's world now, it's I'm thinking, wow, you're right, it did exist back then, but in my upbringing, it was never introduced because it wasn't that big a popular subject or was not studied and provided, just like a fertilizer.
You were a trailblazer, Greg, bringing in the.
Yeah, but the thing I say, I serve on an international committee for Toastmasters now that deals with individuals. And part of that is why I'm reading this book, because that is, in today's world, this is a broader subject than it was way back then. In order to do my serve well on the committee, I need to understand these things. That's why I appreciate these definitions that you've given me, because I want to be able to type these out and have them with me. So as I am going through case studies on Toastmasters individuals, that I can bring this into my checklist. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, because we're bringing seats to the table now. What was it, 1978, when women were first allowed to join Toastmasters?
1970. Yeah.
No, 1970, I think it was the first woman who pretended to be a man to join Toastmasters.
But that was, that was Helen Blanchard.
Yeah, so
1973.